What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Average Joe's Story. I'm Captain Great Value, and I'm going to tell stories that I've heard from friends or read on the internet. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy this content. Hello, how's everybody doing today? I hope y'all are having a good day, mate. Today we're going to be talking about people who refuse to pay a bill. Stories are from the web and some of my friends. As always, be sure to like and subscribe as it's totally free, and drop a comment if you think the video is interesting. Let's dive in. Today's first story is going to be by a Reddit user by the name of Live Breathe Own. I titled this Refusal to Pay Lease because that's just exactly what it is. He said, I gave ample notice to an apartment complex that I would not be renewing by my lease, and they apparently did a poor job at documenting this and tried to charge me a short notice fee when I left. After a long phone call trying to sort it out, the lady told me that this debt owed would affect my credit and was a pretty snooty witch about it. I told her, listen, you will never see this money. No one you sell the debt to will see this money. There is 0% chance I pay this poop. It was so satisfying hearing her gasp at how unfazed I was by it. The debt fell off my credit 4 years ago, unpaid. It's the little victories in life that really matter. You know, this isn't the first time that I've heard about apartment complexes trying to, get off on their renters for, trying to sneak some money in here and there. It's really, really sad that people are that money hungry. It's just, I get that businesses are businesses, but to try to cheat the person on documenting paperwork, instead of, hey, you were a good renter for this amount of time, sure, we'll go ahead and wipe it off, instead saying, we're going to just go and put it on your credit. I mean, it's just not good. Anyways, good story. Let's go ahead and get into the next one. Okay, this next story is from my friend George. I titled it The Cell Phone Entanglement. This story takes place in the early 2000s when there was no such thing as a smart cell phone. The only thing in existence were tiny phones and Nokia phones that came with that cool snake game. George purchased his first phone and he was already married with kids at the age of 20, so you can imagine he had an adult responsibilities at a young age. His first company was US Cellular, and he made the decision to switch to Sprint just because the other company's service was cruddy. Sprint told George that if he wanted to start with Sprint, he would need to sign contracts for service with Sprint. This was so weird to George because he understood that cars and houses needed contracts, but cell phones? So he signed the contracts for switching companies, and they told him it would take a few days to switch to Sprint. That's how slow the process was back then, and now it takes minutes. LOL. After he got his service working with Sprint, he received his first bill of $150 for just two phones. George did not like it, but he continued on with the service since he was on a contract. One day, George gets a text message that says you have reached 75% of your allowed talk minutes. There was no such thing as a free minutes back then at that time because people were still using payphones to communicate with their family. George was unsure about what his plan involved, and he did not read the contract very well. He decided to call customer service and ask what his plan was about, and they told him he was covered for 300 minutes a month, and that if he was about to go over the allowed amount, he would surely receive text messages warning him to be careful, which also charged him 5 cents every text. George thought to himself that he shouldn't need to worry, putting faith in what customer service had told him. One day, a few months later, he was watching a movie in the living room with his family when he gets 7 text messages all at once that informed him he had used 25%, and then another that said he had used 50%, and so on. The last text message he received said Sprint will be suspending your service due to excessive charges on his account. George about fainted when he called and customer service told him he owed a balance of $7,000 for exceeding his plan by 500%. George told the representative that he never knew he was over the plan amount until it was too late, and that all the text messages he received were all within the same minute. The guy on the phone said the reason he probably received his messages all late was because he had poor reception in his home. George asked the rep for a one-time help credit because he said he could not afford to pay $7,000. The rep said, "I'll have to transfer you to a supervisor because he could not credit that high since his limit was $5. After explaining the situation to the super, she told George that even though the service was poor inside his house, he would still need to pay the amount owed because he should have called like every other customer did to check on their minutes. George had had enough, and he said he's not paying Sprint a dime, and if Sprint wants money from him, they can take him to court, and hung up on the super. George received letters in the mail periodically saying it's not too late to pay your Sprint bill, and a few years later they reduced it from $7,000 to $5,000. He decided to never again do business with this company, and only thing letters from Sprint would be good for is lining for his bird cages. Wow, that is some scary business right there. Let me tell you what, $7,000 is pretty high even for today's bills. Nobody in their right mind, and even in this day and age, is going to pay $7,000 to a cell phone company to allow privilege of communicating without using a payphone. I mean, even by today's standards, $7,000 cell phone bill, everybody would say, hey, I'm getting the heck out of Dodge in this company. They can post it to credit as much as they want. But either way, that was a pretty good story from my friend George. Appreciate his story. I told him thank you very much for it. It's a sad situation, but the good news is he did eventually get it out of his credit. It just took a while, 7 or 8 years, I think is what it was. He told me before they stopped sending him letters in the mail. And so, all right. Well, that was a good story. Thank you very much to my friend. And let's go on to the next one. This next story is on reddit.com, and I titled it Therapy Billing Error by Croca for Loca. Just today, actually, I got a call saying that I couldn't see my psychiatrist tomorrow unless I paid the balance on my account. I knew I shouldn't have a balance for therapy services because my insurance covers all of my mental health professionals and always has. I told them to reschedule the appointment so I could figure the situation out, and then they put me over to the billing department. The dude told me that I was charged for it because it was before I had insurance. I told him that made no sense because I had insurance all of last year, then started my new one in January, so a therapy session in November/December would most definitely not be my concern. He then realized the error and said he'd be sending the bill out. So I rescheduled my psychiatry appointment for almost a month away from now, which I'm not too thrilled about over their error. Oh well, such is life. Well, this story's a little short, but I just wanted to post it up on here because it's another example of why companies, make mistakes and try to, end up, charging, the customer for, their own mistakes. And I don't really know, it wasn't really unclear if he paid it or if the company took care of it. It sounds like the company took care of it, but he didn't really make that clear. And anyways, thank you for that there, for Loca. And on to the next story. Our next story that comes to us on reddit.com from the user named Username Checks Out. I entitled this story, Evil Like the Stalker Ex-Boyfriend. She mentioned, about 20 years ago, I had a cell phone with AT&T and a stalker ex-boyfriend. I changed my number and the ex contacted the company, told them he was my husband, and got my new number. He would call hundreds of times a day. I changed my number again and the ex called and told him he was my father and got my new number. I would leave my phone in my car while I was at college and find hundreds of missed calls when I returned. This was back when you were charged by the minute. My bill was like $800 and I refused to pay it. I contacted AT&T, every consumer group, even wrote letters to the government. I let that bill sit on my credit report because I was not going to pay it. I got collection calls for around 10 years. Well, this is another story from back in those old cell phone times when they used to charge by the minute, and this is another same example of when that happened. I can imagine that a lot of customers in those times got charged outrageous prices. What's even more boggling is if they really paid those prices, or did they just let them get to their credit as well? Makes me wonder. Alright, on to the last story for today. This story was found on reddit.com by the username Blipsman. I entitled it The $8,000 Instagram Picture. He wrote, switched cell plans to get carriers, included coverage while on vacation in Mexico. Had issue with way billing was applied that I tried to correct after our return to get a $40 credit. After a number of chats and calls had failed to get credit issued, and I was talking to yet another customer service rep. He mentioned that my old plan also had the Mexico coverage. At that point, I asked if he could just revert me back then, which he did, only he was incorrect about my old plan. He backdated the switch to the original date before the vacation. This triggered all our data used to fall into the non-plan, absurdly expensive rate for international data usage, and something like $8,000 in data use charges on our account. That I learned about when our accounts were deactivated and my wife couldn't call our baby's doctor when he was sick. I spent many hours trying to finally get it all sorted out, but there was no freaking way I was giving them that kind of money for being able to post to Instagram and check Reddit from Mexico. Well, this goes to show y'all that even today, the evil cell phone corporation still gets their wins in, and even though people no longer pay for minutes, it just goes to show that the cell phone corporation will still find some way to charge you an outrageous amount of money. All this talk about evil companies and corporations charging customers outrageous amounts of money reminded me of a clip from a movie. I'm going to share it with you guys. Hope you all enjoy it.
Well, if it isn't Lone Star and his sidekick, Puke.
That's barf.
Barf, Puke, whatever. Where's my money?
Don't worry, Pizza. You'll have it by next week.
No, I gotta have it by tomorrow.
100,000 space bucks? By tomorrow?
100,000? Ha ha ha! No way! You forgot late charges, which brings it up to 1 million space bucks.
1 million? That's unfair.
Unfair to the payor, but not to the payee.
Well, I'll just leave you with this little bit of advice. If you can't trust the fart, don't trust the cell phone company. Always check with them to make sure anything you do ahead of time before you end up getting charged outrageous prices like Blipsman. All right, thank you very much, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much for watching, and if you really like this content, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. See you on the next one.